Chief Guest, Honorable Dio Gunasekar, Honorable Minister, Honorable Senior Minister of Human Resources, Honorable Hassan Iqbal Chowdhury, Federal Minister for Planning in Pakistan, Dr. Saman Kalagama, Executive Director, Institute of Policy Studies of Sri Lanka, many prominent distinguished delegates here. Once again, a very good morning. It is an honor for me to address this inaugural session of the 6th South Asia Economic Summit in this lovely city of Colombo, which also hosted two important SAARC ministerial meetings on SAFTA and finance during the past week. I would like to avail myself of this opportunity to once again thank the government of Sri Lanka for successfully hosting the two meetings that deliberated upon many important issues for the eventual progression towards the South Asia Economic Union, a vision propounded by our esteemed leaders. In this backdrop, it is only fitting that the 6th South Asia Economic Summit opens today to suggest ways and means for further deepening the process of regional integration and cooperation. The coming together of so many luminaries drawn from the region beyond not only signifies the importance of this summit, but also augurs well for its successful outcome. I would like to duly acknowledge Honorable Mr. Dio Gunasekar in our midst this morning. I would also like to welcome Honorable Hassan Iqbal Chowdhury, Federal Minister for Planning of Pakistan, to this summit. This summit looks forward to benefiting from his inspiring keynote address. I would also like to thank my esteemed friend, Dr. Saman Kalagama, Executive Director of the Institute of Policy Studies of Sri Lanka, for organizing this summit and for inviting me to address this inaugural session today. I would also like to thank the Institute for extending gracious hospitality to most of us present here this morning. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, South Asia Economic Summits have been an important platform for the South Asian researchers, academicians, business persons, government representatives, among others, to exchange views on issues having a direct bearing on economic integration of our region. I am happy to mention that the previous 5 summits have been instrumental in generating views and ideas for consideration of the policymakers of our region. I'm glad to note that this summit, which is the 6th in the series, will be devoted to the thematic issues as harnessing human capital, managing water resources, food security and climate change, addressing intra-country growth disparities, and building competitiveness of the private sector. All of these issues are very pertinent to the SAARC process. I remain confident that this summit will provide a great food for thought for our decision makers in the region. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is common knowledge that South Asia is a reservoir of abundant human capital. Though the region occupies a small area of the world in terms of geography, this can be both an asset and liability. If harnessed and utilized well, it can be an asset, but if wasted or unutilized, it can be a big liability. Therefore, the question as to how to make the best use of human capital poses a formidable challenge to all of us. In this context, therefore, the establishment of the South Asian University, which is now in its 3rd year of operation, should be considered as a significant leap forward in not only addressing the human challenge, but also harnessing human capital in our region. Attempts being made by the regular meetings of the University Grants Commission of our member states to harmonize the course content at the higher level of studies and to recognize degrees across the region are another attempt to ensure quality education in the region. Successive SAARC summits have recognized the need to empower women, to ensure the rights of women and the girl child as a key to overall human development. Most recently, the 17th SAARC Summit held in the Maldives in November 2011 directed the convening of an intergovernmental expert group meeting to discuss the establishment of the regional mechanism to ensure empowerment of women and gender equality in the region, with focus on national legislations, including timely realization of the MDGs and SDGs. In the meanwhile, several projects are underway under the social window of SAARC Development Fund to empower the women of our region. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Measures as making the best use of water resources, ensuring food security, and addressing the adverse effects of climate change can effectively contribute towards the overall prosperity of our region. On the other hand, misuse of resources pertaining to those can endanger our overall progress and developments in other areas. It has been speculated in a number of studies that the next big wars will be fought over water. The major rivers of our region, and some of them are among the largest and biggest in the world, traversing across member states, have the potential for conflicts if not handled well, and for immense economic and social development if managed and utilized well. We at SAC look forward to benefiting from the suggestions emerging out of this event in this regard. The vast majority of the population in our region still depends on agriculture, providing them adequate, nutritious food and affordable prices with an easy accessibility. It is a major task facing all governments of our region. Also, as many of us know, there are instances of particular area where experience food shortage, while another area may have food surplus. The agreements on the SAC Food Bank and the SAC Seed Bank, the latter having been signed at the 17th SAC Summit, are some concrete measures initiated by the SAC to contribute towards the overall objective of ensuring food security in the region. I'm glad to inform that all member states have now ratified the agreement on SAC Food Bank. The next meeting of the SAC Food Bank Board, which has been given the mandate to consider the operational aspect of the bank, is scheduled to meet in Bhutan end of this year. However, we must be cautious that all our attempts at ensuring food security might fail if we are not prepared for the changes brought about by the climate change and adverse environment. Already, studies are showing the negative impact of phenomena in recent parts of the region, be it landslides, frequent floods, or frequent droughts. Thus, regional cooperation becomes paramount in these areas, over which advanced preparations and timely help and cooperation are important when a disaster strikes. Fully cognizant of this reality, the 16th SAC Summit held in Bhutan in April 2010 adopted a Thimphu Statement of Climate Change. Subsequently, at the COP16 in Copenhagen, SAC presented a common position on climate change. It was also at the 16th SAC Summit that the SAC Convention on Cooperation on Environment was signed. At the 16th SAC Summit, SAC Agreement on Rapid Responses to Natural Disasters was signed. These measures are pointers towards SAC's growing concern over the environment. In the meanwhile, SAC regional centers on agriculture, meteorology, forestry, and disaster management have been instrumental in carrying forward regional programs in these areas. Ladies and gentlemen, intra-country growth disparity is another challenge for ensuring growth with sustainability. There are a number of studies that show that lopsided and non-inclusive growth creates other problems in the long run, which are not good for any society. For example, it is seen unequal societies have tendency to have more crimes than the other ones that have more equality or inclusive growth. This principle, fortunately, has been in the minds of our leaders. For example, as we are aware, in the context of SAFTA, countries are divided in two categories, as non-least developing and least developing ones, with the latter getting more privileges and time to open up others. The least developing ones are also encouraged to come up with ideas for their further development with help of the other groups. Last but not least, the role of the private sector, which in a majority of cases brings into action the policy decisions taken by our member states, assumes greater significance for fostering regional cooperation. That is why one would notice that in almost all the SAC Summit declarations, especially in the recent ones, there have been given due recognition of the role of the private sector in carrying the SAC process forward. For this region, efforts are underway to involve the private sector wherever possible in SAC process. For instance, in the SAFTA Committee of Experts meeting last year, and in the one held last week here in Colombo, the SAC Chamber of Commerce and Industry was invited to present their views on issues of their concern. So was the case during the special meeting of the SAFTA Committee of Experts that deliberated NTMs and PTMs about a month ago. At the informal meeting of SAC finance ministers held in May this year, for the first time, the president of SAC Chamber was invited to present a paper on the theme of infrastructure financing. South Asia Forum, which was instituted by the 16th Summit, is another attempt to involve the private sector and members of the civil society to give inputs and suggestions for making the SAARC process more effective and inclusive. The forum has completed its first meeting, and we expect the second meeting to take place in the Maldives early next year. Finally, it is nearly 28 years since SAARC came into being. I happen to think the SAARC is the best thing to have happened to this region. But SAARC has a long way to go to realize its real potential and promise. I believe economic cooperation is the way to our success, because only that will create the necessary climate of mutual trust and confidence that is indispensable to creating an environment of peace and stability in our region. With these few thoughts on the 4 issues flagged for the 6th SAARC Summit, South Asia Summit, I would like to once again thank the Institute of Policy Studies for Sri Lanka for inviting me to address this meeting, and all of you for giving me a patient hearing. Thank you very much.